opened my back door, expecting to be greeted by the comforting hum of my rainwater system doing its thing. Soft trickles, the occasional mechanical click, and the earthy smell of a full tank. Instead, I was hit with silence. No flow, no sound. Just an eerie, dead stillness. I stepped outside and stopped dead. The tanks were empty. Every last one of them. 6 interconnected barrels, each capable of holding 500 gallons, bone dry. The overflow pipes gaped open like mouths frozen mid-scream. A thin puddle of residual water glistened near the gutter, slowly drying in the morning sun, like the last traces of dignity after a bad breakup. For a second, I thought maybe it was a leak. Maybe a pipe had burst. Maybe, by some act of God or plumbing sabotage, 3,000 gallons of collected rainwater had vanished into the Arizona soil overnight. But then I saw the tracks. Not animal tracks. Tire marks. Fresh. Curving up my driveway past the tanks and veering off toward the side alley. Whoever did this came with a truck. Had a purpose. I stood there in my pajamas, mouth slightly open, processing the scene like I was the lead in some eco-thriller. The system I'd spent months designing and installing was just gone. The same system that filtered rainwater from my rooftop, purified it through a charcoal and sand filter I built myself, and piped it 2 blocks over to the Heritage Green Community Garden, which I should mention was hosting 64th graders tomorrow for a sustainability showcase, complete with teachers, local reporters, and a city council rep who once got lost in my compost maze. This wasn't just sabotage, this was a disaster. "Yo, Ben, you good, man?" a voice called from across the street. It was Mark, early 40s, wears socks with sandals, always smells faintly of bacon. He stood there in his driveway holding a thermos the size of a fire extinguisher. I pointed furiously at the tanks. "Does it look like I'm good? Someone emptied my entire rainwater system." Mark sipped his coffee like a man observing a zoo exhibit. "Oh, yeah. I saw that yesterday. Some folks came with uniforms. Thought it was city maintenance or something." "Uniforms?" I blinked. "Did you recognize anyone?" He scratched his head. I think Linda was with them? Of course, Linda Beckworth, president of the Willow Ridge HOA. 62, retired from a 30-year career in corporate compliance. Drives a silver Lexus that hasn't seen a speed above 35 infamous in a decade. Always smells like a mixture of lilac and litigation. She once fined my neighbor $300 for planting lavender that was too purple. I stormed inside, heart pounding, and yanked the crumpled envelope off my kitchen counter. The one I'd seen yesterday with the HOA logo I usually associate with bad news and font crimes. I hadn't opened it because I didn't feel like being angry that day. Too late for that now. I scanned the letter. It was full of gems like unauthorized structures, aesthetic noncompliance, and my favorite, 48-hour notice of corrective action. It claimed my tanks were unsightly and non-approved under Section 9.2 of the HOA Exterior Modification Covenant. Unsightly? They were painted forest green, tucked behind my garage, and partially hidden by a decorative trellis. I'd seen inflatable Christmas dragons on the street, more offensive than my rainwater setup. I grabbed my phone and dialed the HOA office. "Willow Ridge Community Management," said a syrupy voice. "This is Karen." Carol. How may I assist you?" "Put me through to Linda Beckworth, now." "I'm sorry, Miss Beckworth isn't available. Would you like to leave?" "She was available enough to have my tanks drained yesterday. So unless you want a very colorful feature on the 6 p.m. news, get me Linda. Please hold. Cue hold music. Synth piano, trying to do jazz, failing miserably. As I waited, I looked out the window and saw her, Linda, wearing her signature beige slacks and matching blazer, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of my yard like she was scouting for real estate crimes. I didn't even hang up the phone. I charged out the door, barefoot, seething. Linda! She turned. Mild surprise crossed her face before snapping back into her usual smirk. Good morning, Mr. Archer. I'm just conducting a follow-up compliance inspection. Drained my tanks. Correction, they were in violation of Section 9.2 of those tanks. Supply the community garden. You know, the one your own HOA board approved last fall as a sustainable neighborhood initiative. She paused. Just for a fraction of a second. I was not made aware of any connection between your property and the garden. Maybe because you didn't bother to ask. She rifled through her clipboard papers like they were tarot cards. Regardless, the removal order stands. You have 48 hours to fully dismantle the structure or face a daily fine of... I didn't hear the rest, because just then my phone buzzed with a call from Jenny McMillan, the science teacher running the school garden program. I answered, still glaring at Linda. Ben, we've got a problem, Jenny said. I went by the garden this morning. It's bone dry, no water. The sensors are already reading critical levels. I turned my head slightly and said with icy calm, I know. The HOA drained our tanks. Jenny's voice dropped. Ben, we've got reporters coming tomorrow. The kids made signs. They're doing interviews. If we don't have water, this whole thing falls apart. I ended the call and looked Linda in the eye. You just ruined a sustainability showcase for 60 kids and their parents. Linda didn't even blink. Well, perhaps next time you'll go through the proper channels before installing unsightly contraptions. She turned and clicked away in her orthopedic heels like she hadn't just torpedoed an entire eco-education event. I stared at her retreating form, rage bubbling in my chest. Fine, if she wanted to fight, I'd give her one. And I knew exactly who to call. I didn't waste time. As soon as Linda's beige silhouette disappeared behind her Lexus, I was already scrolling through my contacts, fingers trembling from a cocktail of rage and caffeine. I landed on a name I hadn't called in a year, but I knew exactly what I was doing. Bison. Landscaper, water rights nerd, and, most importantly, the kind of guy who once showed up to an HOA mediation with laminated spreadsheets and a live demonstration involving potted cacti and a turkey baster. He picked up on the second ring. Well, if it isn't Ben Archer, he said, his voice equal parts sarcastic and intrigued. Calling for love or litigation? Water, I snapped. Actually, the lack of it. That's new, he replied. Usually it's emotional droughts with you. Nice and focus. Linda Beckworth drained my rainwater system. The one I built for the community garden. We've got 60 fourth graders showing up tomorrow with news crews, and I've got no way to irrigate. There was silence on the line. Then, tell me you're kidding. I wish. She cited some covenant about aesthetics, claimed the tanks were unsightly. Didn't ask a damn question before bringing in a team to drain 3,000 gallons. During a drought. Stage 3. Oh, she's dumb and evil. Advertisement, please. He sighed. Okay. Do you still have that old IBC tote I gave you? Yeah, in the shed. Good. You're going to fill it manually. And I'm going to make a few calls. I've got contacts in the city water authority and 2 folks who owe me favors from that xeriscaping project I ran for the mayor's mom. I paused. Wait, you'd help me? After everything? I'm not doing it for you, he said flatly. I'm doing it for the kids. And because I hate Linda's face. While Tyson was off mobilizing the anti-HOA underground, I got to work. I posted on Nextdoor, Facebook, even Reddit. I asked for water donations, buckets, spare barrels, anything. And the neighborhood response was, Janice from 2 streets over offered a single watering can. Mark contributed emotional support. But then, something incredible happened. I got an email from Councilwoman Teresa Lopez. Apparently, someone on her staff had seen my angry thread online, complete with pictures of the drained tanks and a screenshot of the HOA letter. She wanted to know more. By 3 p.m., I was on a Zoom call with Teresa, her aide, and someone from the city's drought emergency task force. Turns out, under a new municipal ordinance, drafted 2 months prior, any rainwater conservation system used for public or educational purposes was protected infrastructure. Tampering with it? Potentially a $2,500 0-cents fine and city investigation. I emailed her every picture, timestamp, and HOA document I had. Even included a blurry shot of Linda pointing at my tanks like she was ordering a hit. Teresa's aide whistled. She's not even supposed to touch private systems. This could get ugly. Good, I said. Ugly is my specialty. By nightfall, Tyson showed up with a rusty water truck he borrowed from a vineyard client. It looked like something from a zombie movie, but it ran, and it held 2,200 gallons. This is barely enough to rehydrate the soil, but it'll keep the plants alive through the weekend, he said, parking it next to the garden fence. Do I want to know how you got this? No, and legally neither do you. We ran a temporary hose from the truck to the garden beds, set up gravity-fed timers, and rigged a makeshift sprinkler system using soda bottles and zip ties. It wasn't elegant, but it was sustainable, baby. Just as we finished, my phone buzzed. Another text from Jenny. The Channel 9 news van just pulled up. They're early. And, oh my God, Linda's here too. And groaned. Tyson grinned. Showtime. When I got to the community garden, the scene looked like the climax of a mid-budget Netflix movie. Kids were gathered with their teachers, clutching hand-drawn signs that read, Rain Saves, and Grow Green. A small crowd of parents had assembled. And right in the middle of it all, Linda Beckworth was squaring off with a reporter from Channel 9. I approached, hair still wet from a garden hose mishap, and heard Linda's voice rise above the chatter. The HOA is simply enforcing its covenants. These unsightly tanks were in violation of neighborhood standards. The reporter raised an eyebrow. Even though they were being used to water a city-approved community garden? That's unverified. Actually, I cut in, stepping into frame. It's very verified. And handed her a folder stuffed with city documents, emails, and the ordinance itself. Highlighted, underlined, and aggressively tabbed. Tyson gave me a little bow from the sidelines. Linda snatched a folder and flipped through it like it was a cookbook in a foreign language. You can't just bring a water truck in here without approval, she hissed. The city approved it. She turned beet red. This is not over. Oh, I know, I said, smiling for the camera. It's just getting started. The reporter turned to the camera. And there you have it. A rainwater rescue, a neighborhood showdown, and a clear example of how not reading the room, or the law, can land an HOA president in hot water. I didn't even have to say a word. Linda stormed off, the news crew in tow, while the kids resumed watering their plants, blissfully unaware of how close their little sunflowers came to death by bureaucracy. Tyson walked over, handed me a juice box he stole from the snack table. Still think breakups should be final? I laughed. Let's call this situational amnesty. By the time I got back home, I'd been tagged in 6 local Facebook groups, 3 next-door threads, and a TikTok someone's teenager posted of me arguing with Linda in front of a sunflower bed. The caption? Rain Daddy versus HOA Karen. I've got 8,000 views, and rising. The views weren't water, and we still needed a backup plan, just in case Tyson's zombie truck didn't hold up, or Linda found some other fine print loophole to sabotage us again. That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m., cross-referencing city codes, water ordinances, and HOA bylaws like I was cramming for the world's angriest environmental law exam. My dining table was buried under printouts, highlighted passages, and an unopened bottle of Cabernet I was saving for either a victory toast or emotional disaster management. Tyson was passed out on the couch, still wearing his muddy work boots and curled around a half-eaten burrito like it was a therapy dog. I was halfway through reading a clause about non-potable emergency irrigation exemptions when my doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. No one good ever rings your doorbell at 2 a.m. I opened it to find Mayor Harold Wexler standing there in a wrinkled polo shirt and gym shorts, holding a flashlight and a binder the size of a phone book. "Mr. Archer," he said, like we were mid-conversation. "Is this true?" "Is what true?" He held up a document. "That your HOA president ordered the draining of a registered conservation system the day before an educational sustainability event during a declared drought? I see the Facebook moms got to you." "My wife did," he grunted. "She's on the PTA. You've somehow pissed off the most dangerous voting demographic in our district." Suburban women? Suburban women whose scrapbook. Stepped aside and let him in. 10 minutes later, he was deep in a pile of city maps and water usage charts, glasses perched on his nose, flipping pages like he was looking for a murderer. "This ordinance was fast-tracked after last summer's fire season," he muttered. "We gave grants to neighborhoods to install systems like yours. We were supposed to highlight your garden in the next Sustainable Suburbia feature." I blinked. "Wait, that was my garden?" "Was," he confirmed, "until your HOA decided they preferred beige over biology." He slapped the binder shut and stood. "I'm calling the city manager. If she's smart, she'll have Channel 12 down here tomorrow morning with a press release and a novelty-size check. Can it be printed on recyclable paper?" "Ben," he deadpanned, "this is politics. We print it on whatever makes us look good." By sunrise, things had escalated faster than a Kardashian feud. Tony, the water truck guy and Tyson's old landscaping buddy, showed up unannounced in a second truck. "I heard you were in deep," he said, climbing down in steel-toe boots. "Figured you'd need reinforcements." "Where did you even get this one?" "Technically, it's leased for a golf course, but they're closed for maintenance. And I brought donuts." He handed me a cruller and nodded toward the garden. "Let's make this place bloom." We had 2 trucks now, a mobile irrigation plan, city backing, and local media watching like it was a Super Bowl of water rights. But drama, of course, wasn't done with us. Because just as we were uncoiling hoses and connecting temporary valves, a white SUV screeched into the parking lot like it had beef with the pavement. Out stepped Trent Beckworth, Linda's son, 38, polo shirted. Bluetooth earpiece in, the kind of guy who always introduces himself as a consultant, but never says for what. He marched up to me like he was storming a boardroom. "I'm here to inform you that your actions constitute a violation of our community water neutrality agreement," he said, as if reading off a script he wrote for himself in the mirror. What now? The trucks, the hoses, the external water application without a cooling permit. Cooling permit? It's outlined in Appendix B of our HOA Climate Compliance Addendum. You just made that up? He held up a laminated sheet. It's color-coded. Tyson walked over, wiped sweat off his forehead, and stared at Trent. You know what color I don't see on that chart? Blue. As in water. As in, what's missing from these garden beds thanks to your HOA? Trent turned beet red. We have rules for a reason. Yeah, Tyson shot back. And you're the kind of guy who thinks the DMB is too lax. Before fists or laminated charts could fly, a van rolled up. City seal on the side. Out came Councilwoman Teresa Lopez. Trent deflated like a souffle in a wind tunnel. She approached with a folder and an entourage of very important people. One of them carried a camera. Another had a clipboard that might have belonged to Linda before she weaponized it. We're issuing an emergency override, Teresa said calmly. This project is now under city jurisdiction for the next 72 hours. Excuse me? Trent sputtered. She turned to him. Any further interference, and you'll be cited under Municipal Statute 49.4 for obstruction of sustainable infrastructure deployment. Even Tyson raised an eyebrow. That's not a real statute, he whispered. He made it sound real, I whispered back. Trent backed off, muttering something about legal review and HOA sovereignty before peeling out of the parking lot like a discount Bond villain. I turned to Tyson. We good now? For now, he said, picking up a hose. But something tells me we haven't seen the last of Linda. And, as if summoned by sheer pettiness alone, my phone buzzed. Linda had posted a 700-word rant in the HOA newsletter. Subject line, Rainwater Tyranny and the Threat to Our Suburban Values. We printed it out, used it to mulch the roses. The next morning felt different, like the air itself had taken sides. The garden was buzzing, not with bees, but with people. Dozens of them. Kids in matching Save Our Garden t-shirts, parents armed with iced coffees and passive-aggressive energy, reporters checking their mics, and a few curious neighbors who just wanted to be near the chaos. You could smell it in the air, the scent of confrontation wrapped in sunscreen and scandal. Then came the silver Lexus. Linda Beckworth arrived like she was hosting a TED Talk on how to destroy joy in 10 easy steps. She wore her HOA badge clipped to her blazer like it was a sheriff's star, and her heels clicked with enough authority to silence conversations. People parted as she approached the center of the garden, right where the camera crew from Channel 12 was setting up. "Excuse me," she said to no one and everyone. "This is not an authorized public event." The reporter raised a brow. "This is a city-sanctioned sustainability showcase, Ms. Beckworth." Linda's lips thinned. I wasn't informed. Tyson leaned over to me. Did she think she was the Queen of England? "I think she thinks England reports to her," I muttered. Before the reporter could ask her another question, Linda was intercepted by her brother. "Yep, Tony. Same guy who delivered our backup water truck, same guy who once got reported by Linda for illegally festive garden gnomes." And the crowd? Oh, they felt the tension. "Hello, Patricia," Tony said, his voice smooth and calm. Only one person called her Patricia. And it wasn't a good thing. "I'm not here to socialize, Anthony," she replied without looking at him. "Good," he said. "Because I'm not here to forgive." Dead silence. Even the news crew froze. "You sabotaged this," Tony said, gesturing at the garden, at the kids watering plants, at the news cameras, at the literal butterflies flitting around like extras in a Disney movie. Because you couldn't control it. This violates every standard. No, you violated every standard, he snapped, of decency, of leadership, of family. Linda's hand twitched near her clipboard, like it was a safety blanket. I tried to do things by the book, she said, quieter now. The rules are there for a reason. Yeah, Tony said. And so are rainwater systems. And so are kids, who care about their planet. And you drained all of it, literally. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked around, suddenly very aware of the dozens of eyes on her. The mayor had arrived and was shaking hands 2 feet away. A Channel 12 boom mic hovered above her head like a guillotine. And then she said something no one saw coming. I made a mistake. The crowd didn't gasp, but I swear I heard someone choke on a granola bar. Linda Beckworth, the same woman who once sent a cease and desist over a garden hose color, just admitted fault. I wasn't aware of the garden connection, she continued, voice measured. I acted based on an outdated covenant and a, personal bias against Mr. Archer's system. You could practically feel the HOA newsletter writing itself in her head. I'd like to propose a compromise. He turned to the mayor. If the city is willing to work with the HOA, I will personally chair a committee to modernize our environmental guidelines, effective immediately. The mayor looked pleasantly surprised. That's an excellent idea, Ms. Beckworth. And, she added, turning to me, I'd like to formally apologize for the inconvenience I caused, and the water loss, and for calling your barrels monstrosities. That was in the email, I said. Yes, she sighed, and underlined, twice. It was the closest thing to an olive branch I'd ever get. But then the reporter from Channel 12 stepped in with a question. Mrs. Beckworth, how does it feel to be the villain in what many are calling Suburba's wettest scandal? Linda blinked. Tyson leaned over again. Did she just get a mean title? She did, I whispered. It's over for the baby. Belinda smiled. I'd rather be the villain who learned something, she said, than the hero who did nothing. And just like that, she pivoted, turning the narrative into a redemption arc before anyone else could claim it. It was terrifying. It was brilliant. It was pure HOA politics. By the end of the event, the city had announced a new Green Suburbs initiative. Our garden got a $10,000 0-cents grant. Linda got a standing ovation for her leadership and reconciliation. And my water tanks? Officially approved, city certified, and now decorated with HOA-mandated wooden paneling and vines. Installed by Linda herself, Tyson took a selfie in front of the tanks. Action. From outlaw to icon. Long live the Rain Gang. 3 months later, the garden looked like something out of a Hallmark movie, but like if Hallmark hired a Gen Z set designer who loved native plants and shade sails. The once wilted vegetable beds were lush, thriving under a carefully designed irrigation system, powered entirely by collected rainwater. Bees buzzed around newly installed pollinator patches. The compost station even had a cute little sign painted by the PTA. Rot rocks. But the wildest part? Linda Beckworth was giving a walking tour. No clipboard, no heels, just a wide-brimmed sun hat, orthopedic sandals, and a demeanor that could best be described as aggressively helpful. This is our barrel cladding, made from recycled cedar planks and painted to match the HO-approved color palette, she explained to a group of new residents. And this vine here, native, non-invasive, certified butterfly magnet. Tyson and I watched from a picnic table, stunned. You think she got body snatched? He asked. No, I said. Worse. I think she read a book on environmental branding. Turns out once the news coverage aired and the hashtag Raingate went mildly viral, Linda had received an unexpected surge of attention. Half the country hated her, but the other half saw redemption opportunity. Her inbox filled with invitations to sustainability panels, local gardening clubs asked her to speak. One HOA newsletter in Phoenix even named her 2025's most improved neighborhood leader. And she ran with it. She'd transformed from rule enforcer to rainwater evangelist. She rebranded the HOA's environmental bylaws as the Sustainable Suburbia Charter. She even made pamphlets, glossy ones, explaining how to install compliant systems that blended in with HOA design standards. Linda, too, was weirdly effective, efficient, almost likable? Okay, not likable, but tolerable. At the annual Meadow Hill block party, she gave a short speech thanking me and the community heroes who stood up for green spaces. Then she handed me a plaque. Outstanding Civic Stewardship Award. That's what we want. Tyson nearly choked on a hot dog. You're the HOA's golden boy now, he said. This timeline is broken. It's giving main character with enemies to allies arc, I replied. Even Tony, Linda's estranged brother and professional water whisperer, had thawed. The two had shared an awkward handshake at the last HOA meeting, followed by a conversation about converting their childhood backyard into a drought-resistant demo site. They weren't exactly hugging, but at least no one was calling code enforcement. But here's the part they don't put in the newsletter. Change didn't just happen because of viral clips or angry rants or news coverage. It happened because people got mad enough to get organized. Because Tyson loaned me a truck, and Tony broke a few rules, and Sarah's class showed up with signs that said, "Let plants drink." It happened because everyone finally saw how fragile good things were, and how quickly someone like Linda could destroy them. And when Linda realized she couldn't outrule us, she joined us. Kind of. The kicker? Last week, she sent me an email with the subject line, Regional Rainwater Showcase Garden. I stared at it for 5 minutes before forwarding it to Tyson. He replied with one sentence. She's gone full hippie. Maybe, or maybe she's just human, like the rest of us. Messy, proud, scared to be wrong, but secretly craving purpose, even if it starts with a clipboard. So, yeah, my HOA tried to erase my rainwater system. Now it's the centerpiece of a city-endorsed sustainability campaign. And Linda Beckworth tried to bury me in rules. Turns out, she planted the seeds of her own transformation. You and me? I just wanted to grow some carrots. If you've ever battled a power-tripping HOA or survived suburban drama, hit that like button and tell me your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because you never know when your neighborhood feud might just save the planet.